Today's Food for Thought, I have got Siobhan Pestano with me, who I met actually while she was treating my dog as part of her cases for while she was training in zoopharmacognosy. Really interesting person to chat away to, and zoopharmacognosy is about the natural treatment of animals, and which is why I had her coming along and working with my dog when she wasn't very well. And I brought Siobhan on today because she had something really interesting to say when it got into conversation. You know what I'm like? I do like a good conversation about horse meat. So hello Siobhan, how are you?
Hello Debbie, I'm very well, thank you.
Now This horse meat malarkey, I have to say that, you know, there are so many issues around this, you know, from what actually happened in our food chain back in January. And mislabelling is actually just the tip of the iceberg, which is what you enlightened me about, and which I really didn't realise. Where do you want to start, Siobhan? Just enlightening my audience in regards to the much wider issues.
Gosh, well, you're absolutely right, Debbie. It is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's such a massive issue. Now, issues within issues, but what actually happened with me, I was doing an animal welfare degree at the time, and I decided to look at this issue more closely than just the kind of furore that was going on in the media. And, you know, once you get digging on the internet, there's quite some interesting stuff started coming through, which I don't think was really made generally available to the public. And even though the issue seems to have slipped away now, I think it's still, that the lessons that have come through from it are still incredibly relevant and incredibly important. And I think the stuff that wasn't put out in mainstream media needs to come out a little bit more. So I'd like to chat about what I discovered. Yeah, just to recap, basically, in mid-January of last year, as I think everybody will certainly remember, the FSA, which is the Food Standards Authority in the UK, made an announcement that a burger had been found with horse meat. This was following the FSAI, Ireland's Food Safety Authority, making their announcement first. The UK had no choice but to follow course and make the submission. And as soon as it was revealed, there followed a festival of finger pointing. It was absolutely hysterical, as you probably remember. And the first thing that happened was blame the international market. This is all their fault. Now, I'm not arguing in any way that some of the horse meat probably did come from abroad, and that inarguably our food chain is massively complex, far more so than it should be, to the detriment, I think, of our UK farmers. But one thing I noticed when I started looking into it was that what was hugely missing across TV reporting and the mainstream, you know, front pages of media was any mention at all of the DSM or desinued meat ban that took place in April 2012 in the UK.
So just explain that ban to my audience a little bit more, because I don't even know about that ban.
No. Most people don't, funnily enough. I think that's the general idea. So DSM, or desinued meat, I'm going to ask your listeners to stick with me, because this bit of the interview is it's a little bit dry and sciencey, but it's really important. If you say, what is DSM? That kind of depends who you ask, and this is the problem, a disagreement between the EU and the UK about the definition. But I'm just going to run through a few facts about desinued meat to give you an overview. So, very importantly, DSM is meat removed from an animal carcass using a low pressure mechanism. So after all the nice minced meat and all the good cuts have been taken off an animal, low pressure is used to remove meat, and the meat generally retains its integrity, i.e. it still looks like meat. So before April 2012, this was the kind of stuff that's going into everyone's sausages, chicken Kievs, pies, forming all, or, you know, certainly the most part of the meat in those kind of foods. It's a majorly important thing. And the animals that could be used for this was ruminants, that's cows, goats, sheep, and also pigs and chickens. And then you go down the scale, as basically that's the lowest scale of meat which can still be called meat in the UK, or could. And then you go down the scale to MSM. Now, once low pressure is removed, is used to remove meat from an animal, you use high pressure, and this tends to make any remaining scraps dissolve into a kind of meat slurry or paste. It's not allowed to be called meat. It can go into food, but it's not allowed to be called meat, and this is quite critically important. The animals that can be used for MSM are pigs and chickens, but goats, cows and sheep cannot be used because of the associated risks of transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, or TSE. So basically what that is, I think we all remember mad cow disease in the late 80s, and basically there's a considered risk by the EU using ruminants for high pressure removal, that there's a risk of TSE. So those animals are banned from that food chain. So, sorry, dry, boring, sciencey bit over with, but it's really important because this is foodstuffs that, you know, largely eaten in the UK by a lot of people. Why was it banned? Basically, the EC felt that the UK producers were failing to apply the correct definitions of the two products consistently, and that might lead to a risk of TSE and a health risk to consumers. When you read, even if the DSM ban was reported in, say, the trade press when it first happened, everyone was jumping up and down saying, there is no health risk. There is no health risk to DSM meat. Even the EU or the EC have said this. But the thing is, you've got the UK having a completely different definition. And their definition was, if I use low pressure and the meat still looks like meat, then that's DSM meat. However, if I use high pressure and the meat hasn't lost its integrity, i.e. it still looks like meat, well then it is still meat and I'm going to call it meat. And that's where you run into a potential health risk. That's point number one. If you're using that ruminant, high pressure removed meat, there is a health risk. Now I can't obviously say in any way who might have been doing that and who might not, but it's just when everyone's saying there's no risk at all, it's semantics. There's a bit of a risk in some production lines, or this is certainly what the EC felt. And then we come to why this ban was so sudden. Because those who did know, in the trade press where it was reported, everybody was jumping up and down and going, oh my God, this is terrible. We've had no notice. It's shocking. But in actual fact, the EC had formally voiced their concerns to the UK in December 2010, and there'd been ongoing discussions all the way through to March 2012. So it wasn't really, they came over to do final checks in March 2012 and just said, we're sorry, we are really worried about how you are producing meat and how you interpret the difference. They called it erroneous categorization of your meat products. We think there is a risk and you have 4 weeks to comply, or just under 4 weeks. So that's what desinewed meat is.
Now, just recently, MPs have been receiving information about all of the investigations that have been going on around this. Not just around the actual horse meat being in the food chain.
Yeah.
Have they actually? This is completely. I have no idea whether you'll be able to answer this at all. But do they actually have this information within that investigation? Do you know? Because I know that they're looking at the number of carcasses of horses that were actually contained painkillers called bute, which has been one of the main things that people have gone on about around it, and the positive tests around that. But actually, has this been part of the investigation? Do you know at all?
Oh gosh, now I'm going to try and answer this as succinctly as I can, because in terms of MPs having the information, how can I answer this diplomatically? I think there's a thing called willful ignorance, which may or not, I certainly think it's involved in the whole scandal, and especially around the DSM ban. Basically, the stuff I've been talking about, the discussions and the meetings between the EC and the FSA, that would have been known. Parliament has a duty to report that to the government, into DEFRA and back out again. That was going on for months. These people can't say they didn't know. And then you've got, the investigations, as you say, that have continued since the scandal first broke. And I'll give you a really good example of where I find it a total fail. The FSA commissioned a report or an investigation following all this, which was done by Pat Troop, who I think she's just retired. She used to, for 25 years, she was involved in the health industry in the UK. So basically, her investigations were conducted under what's called Chatham House rules. And that's when, you know something's going on. You want to get the truth out of people, but people don't. I mean, I had the same when I was snooping around for my college dissertation. When I spoke to people, a lot of them were really wary about speaking to me until I assured them that I would withhold their identity of anything they told me, because they didn't want to lose their jobs. So Chatham House rules means that you get a bunch of people in a room, they contribute openly, but whatever they say is not attributed to them personally. So it's it's not off the record, but it's sort of protected, if you like. Now, one of the things I laughed, but it wasn't funny. One of the things at the front of the report stated, I must just to clarify as well, the people who are being interviewed, there are about 50 people, including FSA officials, government department officials, ministers, FSA in Ireland, industry representatives, basically anybody who had good insider knowledge about the situation. And they were asked if they considered adulteration with horse meat as a possibility. Did they or could they have spotted it coming? And the responses were that it was acknowledged that meat, was an expensive thing, that people might want to adulterate for profit. In some circles, there was a knowledge of excesses of horses going to slaughter. Worldwide, prices of horse meat had dropped, and however, the equine meat wasn't used in the UK, so the possibility of horse meat being adulterated just wasn't considered. Now, I find that odd enough in itself, but no mention at this juncture was made of the DSM ban. She's talking directly to all the people who had the most knowledge about it and asking them directly if there's any way they could have known about it, and they're saying no, because we don't eat horse meat over here.
But the thing is, from my perspective, you look at an economy beef burger, illegally can contain as little as 47% beef.
Yeah.
What are people expecting? It's bound to be bulked out by cheaper produce.
Well, exactly. I mean, the kind of, I'm not a massive fan of processed foods, but, I think people like to think, well, if you've got a beef burger and it's filled out with a bit of carbs, a bit of rusk, a bit of something, you want to think it's innocuous. You hope it's innocuous. But, I mean, just to sort of, to clarify, to recap this thing that, we couldn't have known. Of course, her report went on also to recommend in the future horizon scanning, intelligence gathering and analytical capability, the right people to ask the right questions to avoid this happening. What they already knew was the following. For at least 2 years before the ban, there had been high-level discussions between the FSAI and the FSA, i.e. Ireland and UK food safety authorities and welfare organisations, saying, guys, we have hundreds and hundreds of horses being transported regularly into the UK. They were obviously reporting from a welfare concern, but they were keeping a very close eye on it and keeping these people fully informed. So they already knew for a long time, hundreds of horses, hundreds and hundreds being smuggled. There were huge jumps in horse meat production and racehorse slaughter in the UK as well. And then you've got a DSM meat ban where, and just to give you an idea of how much meat we're talking about, that kind of desinued meat, you had about 600,000 kilos of meat a week. disappearing from the UK food market.
And, the World Horse Welfare people, they actually discovered that 90% of horses found in one shipment shown signs of disease.
Well, absolutely. The thing is, once people have decided that there's money to be made, they will turn a blind eye to pretty much everything involved in that. I mean, unfortunately, even in the food industry, animal welfare, it's much higher here than it is in a lot of other countries, and it's still not brilliant. But a lot of countries, animal welfare is so far down their list. Whether a horse is diseased, sick, starving, weak, is of no interest. There's, the passport system was just so unbelievably flawed. I mean, there were horses travelling on passports with names like gonorrhea. That's how I know. Again, we laugh. It's not funny, but it is a little bit. But it just to show how absolutely confident everybody was that nobody was looking and nobody cared. As long as if you've got a horse with bute or bute in it, it's worth about a tenner to the food chain because it's not fit for human consumption. If you make a fake passport for a few pounds, it could be worth about £400. People are going to make a little bit of effort for that kind of profit.
And, I have to wonder whether, the question has ever been asked when they were cutting back on the inspection and regulation. Did anyone ever seem to consider the fact that it was highly likely that the food quality would be compromised within our food chains? It's almost inevitable.
Well, it is inevitable. And, again, I mean, I wonder why there is, to me, what is an inarguable cover-up. I'm sorry if that sounds a bit hysterical or over the top, but as far as I'm concerned, the fact that this was kept well out of the main media, the kind of responses I get when I phone the FSA and stuff like that, stonewalling or just ignoring my emails. Nobody, I mean, even there's a fabulous little YouTube clip of Owen Patterson when one journalist who did have their finger on the pulse asked him about the ban. And he just looked like a rabbit caught in headlines. He tried to ignore her twice and then he just talked over it, ignored the question and literally ran off camera. They don't want to talk about it. And I wonder if one of the contributory factors is exactly what you're saying. In 2010, they made a bunch of changes. They took a lot of power away from the FSA. And in fact, I think even at that point, their name was changed from food safety to food standards. And it was a total misjudgment. They wanted the meat industry to become far more self-regulating. Well, that's just not a good idea, is it? And I think now they're thinking, oh, let's not really drag that up because it's really embarrassing for us. And let's not forget, Debbie, at the end of the day, the business with Bute, for example, they like making a big deal saying it was tested, but the results are so low, there was never any threat. You'd have to eat 600 burgers to get a human dose of it, That's not the point.
It's not, is it, here?
The point is that if Bute was in the meat at all, it's unfit for human consumption. And it was in the meat, and we were being fed meat that was unfit for human consumption. So it begs the question, well, supposing it had been a different type of scandal. There have been other food scandals in Europe where other ingredients go in, which are really toxic. What if people have dropped down dead everywhere? Absolutely. The powers, I put powers in virtual inverted commas that the FSA have now are almost negligible. They're laughable.
But also they're going against their own ban, is my understanding. They're almost allowing it to happen because the inspections have been dropped.
Well, you've got a number of issues. I think at the end of the day, the government are very beholden to the food industry. I mean, if nothing else, this whole scandal has proved that the government aren't the people holding the cards here. The fact that not one person has been prosecuted or one fine has been issued to supermarkets who across the board were selling us products which were either unfit for human consumption or were not what they said they were, not a single fine. It's really obvious who's holding the cards here. It's not the government, and it's not the Food Standards Authority. Also, I mean, now, since their powers have changed, they have some powers, but they have no powers to require testing and no powers to insist on reporting of the results. What's the point? You know,
there's no consequences fundamentally.
There's no consequences. I think now they've tried to suggest that supermarkets should do their own testing and issue quarterly reports. I think the next report was due at the end of this month, just gone. But if people are self-regulating, self-policing, don't really have to report everything they find, I mean, it's a mug's game, isn't it? There's no accountability. And when there's no accountability and the chance of big profits, that's a really dangerous situation from a health perspective.
And we know from our food chain in general that actually manufacturers are driven by profit, not health.
Oh no, of course. I mean, of course they are. They're a business. They're not interested in, selling us food that's good for us. They're interested in maximising profit. That is what they're there for. I mean, that's kind of common sense. I don't think it's across the board. I think there are, a lot of small businesses, especially butchers, I think they at least did a little bit better out of this whole situation. But there are smaller retailers who, want to keep selling a good product, a good, honest product to people. But as soon as you get into big industry, it is all about profit, and human health is really of, I think, complete disinterest.
How do you think they've kept it out of the wider media, this particular issue?
Hard for me to say. I don't know. I do know enough to know that, you can have a media whiteout. You can have things withheld in certain situations. Orders are given. And whether or not that's the case in this case, I don't know. I find it extraordinary that, it wasn't that it wasn't reported at all, but it wasn't in the mainstream. You had people like the Telegraph who would report it in their food and drink section. So if you're really interested in food and drink, you might see it. But I'm sure you remember just as well as me, at the time of what will always be known as the scandal, and it was a scandal, there were screaming, lurid headlines every day, mostly going, it's his fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. Yeah. Not once did I see a page, or did I see it on TV. I had all my friends, I said, look out, anybody shout if you see a single thing on this. Let me know. No, nobody saw anything. So I can't accept that was accidental.
And, when you consider that from what you're saying, there are serious health implications here for us not knowing this information, aren't there?
Massive. I think this is really the important thing. This is the overriding message that we've got from the Horsemeat scandal. Whether or not, those large-scale horse smugglings, if you want to call them that, the welfare issue, I hope, has improved there. But what it did was shine a great big fat light on our food industry. And, whilst the scandal and the screaming and the headlines seem to have gone away, I think people should, it's just as valid as ever. Please don't believe that it's what's really changed since it happened? It's got massive implications. Again, at the time, the big battle cry was, this is I read it so many times. Oh gosh, made me so cross. This is a matter of fraud, not safety. I want to know how anybody thinks that you can separate the two. How can you separate the two? If you are in charge of guaranteeing the quality of food production, and you're saying there's fraud around this product, it means that you don't know what's in it. If you don't know what's in that product, then you have lost control of production quality and food standards and food safety. If you've lost control, you are in absolutely no place to make any guarantees to anybody about the food being safe. The bottom line is you don't know what's in it. You don't know what's in it, so how can you turn around and say it's safe. It's not about safety. It is, because you don't know what's in it. You've lost control. Our country has lost control of food standards and food safety. That is the simple message which has come out of the horsemeat scandal, and it is as relevant now as it was when everybody was jumping up and down about horsemeat.
I completely agree with you on so many other levels as well. I think the quality of food is not in any way a key factor for our government to be focusing on. They just don't seem to care about the quality of food. They don't seem to care that some of our kids aren't eating, to be honest, which is another show entirely. But they really don't seem to care about food quality, and are not even interested in making sure that there is a level of standard that is actually even acceptable, never mind high.
No, I know. I mean, there's a great sort of theatre about making it look as if they are. But, you know, from the point where they devolved the whole, the original Food Safety Authority in 2010, and made this kind of confusing mishmash of who is responsible for what. And I honestly don't think I've been reading a lot of pretty dry, boring reports, but nevertheless, they are informative. They're available on the internet. I honestly don't think that DEFRA or the FSA are both entirely clear, even now, who's doing what and who's responsible for safety. The government are great at making noises. I mean, I do remember David Cameron at the time of the horse scandal saying, you know, we'll meet the full force of the law, the full consequences. Ooh, have you gone off, Debbie? No, sorry. Yes, he was saying, you know, we're going to bring the full force of the law to people who have, you know, been responsible for this. Nobody has encountered anything. Nobody's been charged. And when you think about it, it's not really surprising. At the end of the day, as we just discussed, the FSA really don't have any power worth speaking of anymore. And the government is scared of the food industry. They're scared of them. You know, as soon as the horsemeat scandal broke, spokesmen for supermarkets like Tesco's like, well, you know, this may mean food price rises for our consumers. I'll get onto that in a minute. Didn't see that happen. But the threat of price rises at a time when the country's already feeling pushed, that's a vote loser, isn't it? It's a vote loser. So the government don't stand up to the food industry. The food industry do what they like. They missell us products which actually were unfit for human consumption. Nobody's been fined. Everyone's got their heads down. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I mean, even the promises that were made about shorter food chain promises, everyone was bleating on about those. And I think some supermarkets did start to sort of make tracks and start to progress that. Already it's been reported that those are starting to renege. I think there's been an inversion in the pork backgammon supplies already to just go further afield where stuff is cheaper. And you're right, the government don't care. It's not about worrying about our health. It's about making sure that you keep big industry happy, because if you don't, you know, you'll end up losing votes. It's terribly sad, but it's been made very, very obvious, inarguably obvious, by, you know, the consequences or lack of them following the horsemeat scandal.
And when you're saying to me that the supermarkets have come out and one of their spokesmen has said, well, inevitably it's going to almost be higher prices, it's almost a threat, isn't it? It's like, here's our cards, this is what it's going to mean. And you look at the profits that are fundamentally being made by those corporates that are controlling this food chain and the large agribusinesses. It's not small. So it's not as if they can increase the profit. But it's absolute theatre. You know, you said it, theatre.
You know. It is, and you know, speaking of the sort of price rises and so forth, it brings me to, you know, to go back about the DSM ban.
Yeah.
It was requested in March 2012, and admittedly the industry was given, you know, for such a massive step, it was given really very little notice, just under 4 weeks notice. Okay, so, you know, that's your 600,000 kilos of meat out of the food chain. And I also, you know, as I sort of mulled this over in my head, I was like, wow, so hang on a minute. So when did that happen? Because surely there would have been a massive supply chain issue. All all those products that did have a meat product that was perceived to be a potential threat, surely they would have had to come off the shelves, would they not? There would have had to be repackaging for, meat either downgraded to MSM standards. I didn't see any of that happen. There would have been price rises. That didn't happen. I spoke to supermarket managers who insisted on having their identity withheld, who not only said no, there were no supply issues. There were no communications. These are people who were at a sort of managerial level where they would be advised if there's going to be a supply issue with food, and then, feed that down to the shop floor and how to manage it there. No price rises, no supply issue, all done without a blip. It just, again, I just think blind eyes must have been turned all over the place by the FSA. Who was responsible for policing the ban and the swap over to ensure standards were held? Who said, okay, guys, really sorry that you're going to have to do this. Who are you going to get as your supplier now? Because, not being funny, but we've heard there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of horses coming through the UK all looking a bit dodgy. We've heard there are dodgy passports. So could you just tell us who your new suppliers are so we know that the food for the UK is safe? No, I don't think that actually ever happened.
Absolutely astonishing, to be honest.
It's honestly the deeper I dig, you just sit there going, what? It's an outrage. It's just dreadful.
And the thing is, when they've got organisations like the World Horse Welfare people, they were actually highlighting the factor of the number of horses that were being it's not traded, but it was travelling backwards and forwards. They were highlighting it, and the numbers that they were actually doing in their own research, which were disease. So they knew. It's not as if it could be ignored.
They knew so well, Debbie, that in summer 2011 there was a meeting. Well, there were several crisis meetings. There was one at Aintree where, again, the same kind of people who I mentioned earlier, trading standards, horse welfare people, anyone was attending these, having a crisis meeting about it. And it was, again, I don't particularly want to reveal my sources, but it was said at that meeting out loud, I did kind of go back to verify this fact, we don't want this becoming a big issue at the moment. All eyes are on us. We have the Olympics next year. So part of me thinks, well, if that isn't horrific enough in its own right, a bit of me thinking, we've got the Olympics next year. We have gazillions of people coming into the country and fast food being sold left, right and centre. Surely that would be a time, again, a good reason to look at the issue more closely, because if the temptation was ever there, it would have been there building up to the Olympics and, fast food supplies.
But they're more interested in the bad PR that the UK might get.
Exactly. Exactly. And, as it is, we've become a laughing stock. I mean, at least, even though, as I said, it's not funny, but at least we do retain our sense of humour and the jokes that were coming. But, in all seriousness, if they hadn't have had this ban, then the EU threatened to ban the export of British product again. And yet again, the British meat industry comes under fire for the way we produce stuff here. And in some ways we're trying to do the right thing. We try and have better husbandry. In other ways we've got, an industry which is allowed to regulate itself, and we have everybody who's kind of involved turning a blind eye. I mean, there were a couple of great quotes about it. One of the guys who's Lord Haskins, who used to be one of the country's biggest manufacturers of ready meals via Northern Foods, he described it as institutional fraud. When the thing blew up, it's kind of like, oh, this person's failed to do their job, or that person's failed to do their job. It's not here or there. It is institutional. And Professor Tim Lang said the world's third biggest retailer, Tesco, didn't know what's going on in its food. It cannot be happening without hundreds of people being willfully ignorant. You know, it's not one or two people not doing their job. This is complicity. And even though the transportation of horse meat might have died down, the complicity in putting any old rubbish into food that you actually think you can get away with, I think is still very, very valid. I think it's something we all need to be concerned about because, as I've said, nothing has changed in terms of regulation, apart from, as I said, you know, supermarkets are going to do a bit of testing, report what they want about it. But nothing has changed since the horse meat scandal broke. Our food industry is a mess.
And as you've said, you know, even when something did happen, you've spoken to the store managers and nothing changed.
No, exactly. And, you know, obviously, if you keep stuff like this out of the mainstream headlines, because most people, let's be honest, are sitting on the train, they read a few bits and pieces in the newspaper, they put it down, or they put it in the bin, they get off the train. They don't unless they've got an industry interest in food and drink, whiz to the food and drink section. They don't. You know, so if you keep it out of mainstream media, then the vast majority of people who go into supermarkets aren't going to ask the question. They have no questions to ask because they have no information.
The thing is that if you're looking at the ingredient list, most people don't even look at the ingredient list for a start on what's on their food. They haven't a clue what they're eating. And, you know, I know that from some of my experiences with people. And then we've got, you know, people who will just eat anything. So,
but also, I mean, in terms of the labelling you're mentioning, I mean, there was a fantastic documentary a little while ago about, or it might have been a series, I can't actually remember, but it was about the whole thing of food labelling in the UK, whether it was, you know, your 5 a day and what this little icon meant, and that was the authorised icon, but somebody else could put a different icon which wasn't authorised, looked almost the same. Blah, 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 blah. It's completely bamboozling for people. And I think that's, again, it's not accidental. Stick something on which makes my product look healthy. It might not be, but people like see a little picture and they'll grab it. And then I've got my sale. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter if I've been deliberately misrepresented. I just want to sell my stuff. If they do want to read the labels, I'll make them so confusing in such tiny print that no one's got a clue there either. Who wants to go and read 40 labels when you're in the supermarket? Who's got the time? You know, you could like bring a packed lunch and go in there in the morning, and you might have a trolley full by the time you came out. It's not made easy for anybody to police processed food. It's made, you know, let's put a little sticker on. Hopefully you'll buy it. That's all the issue.
And the other thing is here is actually it can have a label on it, but it might actually not even be what it says.
Well, yeah, there's the other thing. That is the other thing, of course.
Excuse my language, guys, but the label's worth jack shit.
It has been rendered absolutely meaningless. And retailers are bold. They either don't know. I mean, this is it. You don't know how many of the retailers sat in the don't know camp. Yeah. And how many of them sat in the don't care camp. I don't know what's in it. I don't know if it's got horse meat. I don't care if it's got horse meat. I mean, I also remember there was a brilliant programme on, again, at the time, the height of the furore, BBC Three did a fabulous thing called Horsemeat Banquet. And in amongst the things that they were doing, they had a bunch of people go out on a Friday night and buy some takeaway food from a variety of places, you know, kebab, a takeaway curry, all those kind of places that people think it's good to buy food from on a Friday night. Now, you would have thought, you know, at that particular point, that if ever there was a time when people were going to be like, oh, I think this is a bit dodgy, I'll put this stuff back in the freezer for now until it's all died down, you would have thought that it might be quite difficult to find adulterated food on the market. They bought a whole different range of meals. I think one of them turned out to be what it said, and that was actually a kebab. It was what it said it was. Good luck to the kebab. Lots of things were like made of lard and instead of meat, or they had different animals where it should have been, you know, lamb where it should have been chicken, or vice versa. But most notably, there was a lamb curry that had not only no trace of lamb. So this isn't all about horse meat. This is the point I really want to make. It had no trace of lamb, so they went, okay, well, let's try horse. No, it's not horse. Okay, it's not chicken. It's not beef. It's not pork. It's not dog. It's not goat. They got so alarmed in the end, they actually tested it to see if it was human. How horrendous is that? Because we don't know. Is it cat? No. Dog? No. What is this meat? They still don't know.
Oh my God.
It's just a salutary lesson. It's, if you like those kind of foods, I'm not God, it's everyone, each to their own, but people really have to understand the level of disinterest in selling them any kind of quality, or even selling them legitimate food. If there's a profit to be made, it will be made. If that involves illegal food and people think they can get away with it, then they will.
Blimey.
Sorry. That's a really happy little story, isn't it?
I'm just really grateful that I'm vegan at this point, to be absolutely honest. And in many respects, I'm suggesting to lots of my audience, if you can't identify it, it might be that you just don't eat it.
Yeah, well, that's a really good argument, I would say, for any processed meal. I just don't get it. I never have. And I'm speaking not as, a great sort of earth mother who cooks all her own grains, and I'm not a vegetarian, but if I eat meat, I've got a little shop here which has very high level husbandry. Not everybody wants to be a vegan, but it doesn't mean they can't participate in doing things which support good meat production, and taking responsibility for, that's the kind of thing of where people have to take their own responsibility. I'm not saying don't ever use a supermarket. I think if people get goals that are too unrealistic, or advice which is not going to work, by all means use a supermarket. You don't have to buy ready meals. I'm a rubbish cook, but even I can make soup or a stir fry. Fresh food, it's not difficult. No one's saying don't ever eat meat, but the rate at which we eat it at the moment is unsustainable. If you want to eat meat 3 times a day, then you are going to have this farming that we've got at the moment with, horrible practices tucked away where nobody can see them, and people's expectations of how much they can eat meat and what it costs is also something which has kind of gone all over the place. I did another kind of thing for my studies, and chicken, for example, I was looking at that. Chicken consumption in the last 60 years has increased by, I think it was something like 20,000%. No, it wasn't. No, that's ridiculous. 2,000%. But a 2,000% increase in a matter of decades. It used to be a special treat, and now people think I've got a right to eat meat for my breakfast, for my lunch, in a snack, probably between the two, in an afternoon snack, for dinner, and on my way home after the pub. And it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable from production point of view, and also from a wallet point of view. Yes, of course you're going to want to eat meat if you eat it that often. You're going to want it to be really cheap. But there is no such thing as a free lunch. That's the thing. If food is really cheap, there's a reason. There's a reason, That's all. People have to kind of take that on board themselves, I think, and make their decisions. But I think, your summary is brilliant. If you don't know what's in it, don't eat it. It's very difficult now, because that would mean making everything from fresh. And I think for some people that's difficult. But certainly, the whole mystery meat thing, I think, is one to avoid. It really is, because, it's not good.
The supermarkets have a role to play here in regards to they need to be making us feel confident in what we are eating, and in many respects what you've told me is that nothing has changed, so they've not addressed that, have they?
Well, not as far as I'm aware. Again, when the scandal broke, you had people like, again, I think it was a big Tesco advert, a huge whole page, and it was just of text, no pictures, no doubt to look very honest and solemn and maybe a bit bashful, about how they realised they'd made mistakes and how they were working on, being different. They understood as I said, maybe some investigations were made into shortening some food chain productions, but those are already starting to be brought back. I would love to be able to answer you in more detail, but there is nothing forthcoming. This is really my problem after everything, the country went through. And when I say the country, I really mean the people who buy that kind of food a lot. I didn't feel particularly engaged or worried because I don't eat it. But, a lot of people do. And whether it was worried about, whether they were really upset. You've got horse lovers that might have been really upset because they'd eaten horse. I know that's a personal issue. Some people would say it's just another animal. Some people really upset about it. You've got a dreadful thing with people from different faiths having food contaminated with meat, which is unacceptable to their faith. And, lots of people, apart from just being lied to and having no consequences for the actions of multi-billion-dollar companies, we at least are entitled to some clear, accessible information and regular updates on what's going on. And I do mean accessible. Not everybody is going to be, burrowing around on the internet like I am, pulling up documents which frankly I need 8 cups of coffee to get through. There's lots of lovely industry jargonese and fabulous catch-all phrases, and if you stick them all in a sentence it really makes it sound like something's happening. And when you actually break them down, nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. Lots of people are going around. The Pat Troop report that I referred to said, blah-de-blah-de-blah, at the end of this slightly disingenuous or pointless report. I'm not sure if information was deliberately withheld. But, she's making recommendations about, this, greater kind of information and connections and communications. Like that information, what you've just put was actually already in a government report from summer 2012. So, seriously, what is the point of the entire report? I know that because I've read the other report, because I've had my head stuck in this. But somebody else, if they just took that report, which was supposed to be the be-all, the answer to, investigating and, let's have accountability, missed out massive pieces of information in a way I find inexcusable. I just don't believe it was left out by accident. And is making just parroting recommendations that were a year old, and they're just recommendations at the end of the day. The Government Committee for Keeping an Eye on DEFRA published their last report in mid-July of this year, which means that the government had 2 months to respond, so it should have responded in mid-September. I can't find anything on the internet. I've emailed, I phoned to ask if there is an update. There's a sort of tumbleweed style of silence coming back. So, again, big fat nothing, big fat zero happening. The situation is the same. We have a food industry which is out of control. We have a government who's too scared to stand up to our food industry. And who can basically do what they like without even being fined a fiver for it. They had probably a momentary blip in their share prices, but that was about it,
And again, you've shown there that it's all just theatre, even with that report.
Completely. Bluster, bluster, bluster. I mean, honestly, I could write a script if I had time, make a little theatre play out of it. It's all so predictable. It's so predictable, and the theatre, that is, but the lack of action is shameful. I'm just horrified by it, and really, actually, to be honest, Debbie, I'm quite angry. We're all being treated like fools, and how can it change? How can we change it? Because the government's doing nothing, the food industry's doing nothing. It's really, really important for people to take some ownership of what they eat themselves for their own health, because we've all got gripes about industry. We all like to moan about things like, built-in obsolescence in electrical goods and things, all of which I think is pretty true as well. But this is about food. This is what goes into our mouths and creates our new cells. It's what becomes us. And we are being sold rubbish. Sometimes we're being sold unidentified rubbish. And that just means that there is space for another, catastrophe to happen. Sorry, just again, something else which is funny, isn't funny. After the reports were published this summer, the chief executive of the FSA, Catherine Brown, they're kind of reviewing how they coped with the furore and going forward what to do, said, we do need to formalise the understanding so we're all ready to respond should there be a similar incident in the future. What? I think you're kind of missing the point. I think that's the point. I think surely the point is that we don't have another incident in the future. Isn't that the point? Wouldn't that be the point, wouldn't you think?
Yes.
That's just really... Oh, you have to be kidding. Did you actually say that? It's I don't know, Debbie. I'm lost for words.
Well, you can see there it's just about the PR and how they're going to manage it and play it down.
Managing the PR, not managing the avoidance of our food being contaminated with stuff. In this particular instance, it wasn't poisonous or dangerous, but hey, who's to say? If, as I said before, if you don't know what's going into the food, if you have lost control of production, then you've just lost control, and you cannot give anybody a guarantee about safety. You just can't. So it's up to consumers to really... It doesn't matter how busy you are. I'm busy, you're busy, we're all busy. It's a busy world. It doesn't mean to say that you can only do a weekly shop at a supermarket. It doesn't mean you can never shop at a supermarket. It just means shop selectively. When I would, the processed stuff, try and find literally good suppliers. Go every now and then. If they're not local to you, go every now and then. Go to a small business, support them. Come home, fill your freezer with food that you can trace. If you've got a local butcher, ask them about their suppliers. They won't mind if they've got nothing to hide, and I think most butchers don't have anything to hide. Cooking's another thing. We all love to watch cookery programs. We've all stopped cooking. It's nuts. And what's coming up before us is an entirely lost generation of children who can't cook and who honestly respond to a pizza advert thinking that paying 10 quid for somebody to deliver a lukewarm slice of bread with some tomato paste on it is not only fun, but good value for money. It's really important, if you've got children, that you teach them to, teach them about real food. Fortunately, that is one good thing which is really gathering speed in the country now, and for the last few years. We've got amazing work. Jamie Oliver, I love him. The stuff he did, with the schools and the school dinners. I mean, absolutely fabulous. When I saw it, I just thought, oh, thank you, somebody. He's got more muscle than somebody like me to push the boundaries a little bit further. He's got the wherewith as a celebrity to make informative, accessible programs. I mean, this is the key thing, all about accessibility, to helping people understand the problems with the food, what it is they're really eating, what they could be eating instead, and how easy it is. It's really not that difficult to make healthy food for yourself. It really, really isn't. So Jamie, Hugh Fanny Whittingstall, Jimmy Doherty, love all those people. They've done some great. And TV now obviously is a form of media, which a lot of people, it's a lot easier, isn't it? Sit down with a cup of tea and watch the TV rather than read all about it after a hard day at work. So there is lots of information available on the internet if you do want to read. Even if you're a basic cook, there's stuff available to you, to everybody. I would really implore people to empower themselves, to be able to start moving away from this kind of food. There's never going to be a point when anyone cares about the quality of it. They don't care. They have no reason to care. They have no consequence when they sell us stuff which is not fit for human consumption. There's no reason for the supermarkets to really improve, is there? Because there's no deterrent.
The thing is, if we stop buying it, if we just stop buying anything we can't identify, then it just stops it in its tracks because they're not making the money.
Absolutely. That is absolutely what I think. At the end of the day, to quote a phrase, money talks and bullshit walks. And that it really is that simple. Sorry to be vulgar, but at the end of the day, if you withhold your funding from something that you don't agree with, it can't survive. It's that simple. You want to go into the supermarket and buy your rice and your bits and pieces and your nuts and things, great, you know, but then if you've got a local butcher or a local greengrocer, support them, not just for your health, but from that's a whole other issue, isn't it? The whole thing about if you don't support local businesses, they can't support local farmers. That's another big issue, which we really can't get into here. But, you know, everybody wins by, I think, people taking ownership, I would say, of the fresh produce, your meat, your dairy, your fruit and veg, and get home and do a little bit of cooking with it. And as you say, just don't buy it. If you don't buy it, that's a louder message than any newspaper headline. It's a louder message than a sort of temporary blip in your share prices. If people stop buying it, it says everything that needs to be said. It really does.
Siobhan, this has been an absolutely brilliant interview, I have to say. You know, and now everybody, you can understand why I invited her onto the show, because, you know, she was truly enlightening when I met her, and absolutely passionate. And I've hardly got a word in edgeways, which is probably which is really beneficial for me, of course. So, Siobhan, where do people go to find out more about this? Is there specific places that they can find out more for themselves?
It depends on literally what they want to find out about. If they want to find out more information, or to find out that I am in no way exaggerating anything I've said about the DSM meat ban, then Google DSM meat ban. You'll find information about that. It depends what it is. You know, lots of eco or environmental sites give encouragement, or food sites about how to start, you know, bringing some fresh food into your life and moving away slowly. You know, don't set yourself goals that are unmanageable. But, you know, if you want to know about cookery, it's on the internet. Also great programs. I would refer, if anyone's got any doubts, I would go back to the stuff, which I'm sure you can buy online, of Jamie Oliver's school dinners programs, and also Jimmy Doty and Hugh Fanny-Whittingstall's programming about our food industry and the implications about it. It's really easy to watch. It's really accessible. Watch it with your kids if you've got kids, because, you know, involve them. This is going to be their future. If they can't eat healthily, if they are dependent on people selling them pre-processed rubbish, they're going to be very sick in the future, and maybe you're not when you're not there to look after them. Sorry, I'm not trying to be dark here, but we owe it to our children to make sure that they have an understanding about food, and we owe it to ourselves. Even me, as I said, is a not very good cook. I mean, chef's away at the moment. My partner, who's a fabulous cook, he's away. So, like, last night I came in, busy all day at work, had a report to write, and literally I thought I've got about 10 minutes to make some food. So I chopped some vegetables, shoved them in a roasting tray, came back 10 minutes later, and I was just sitting there going, oh my God, this is delicious. Oh my, because, you know, fresh vegetables, just roasted with oil, absolutely no effort involved. Just so lovely. It's so easy to eat really nice food, and it's much cheaper. It's a fallacy that eating well is really expensive. You know, if you want to eat, you know, organic everything all the time, it will increase your budget, but you don't have to. Again, make it manageable for yourself. If you can't afford organic, buy a little bit of organic if you can, and mostly just fresh stuff. But you can buy fresh food, and it's so much nicer, so much better for you. You feel cleaner. It's just brilliant. Everyone can enjoy doing that, Debbie. Even me, as a rubbish cook.
So none of us are going round to Siobhan's because she's really not that great a cook.
I'll get you.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. It's been brilliant. Hi everyone, how are you all? Who's out there? Nick, no more riding shotgun with me. Oh, but thank you for saying I sound good. Did you all enjoy Siobhan? She was cracking, talking about horse meat. I never got a word in edgeways. That's the sort of interview I like, let's face it. Hello, Pat, how are you? Laurie. Oh, yeah. Bitching. How did he get out? Anyway, what else? Tim from Tank, hello. And no, I wasn't advising anyone to watch TV. You know me better than that. Throw it in the street and burn it. Absolutely. And Kush, is that right? Have I said that right? Kush, what else has been going on in the chat box? Or is everyone just saying hello to each other? I don't know. Anyway, get in the chat box and talk to me. You know I love you all to talk to me. Anyway, what have I been doing? I've been thinking about TED. TED is now banned in, not the film, although, you know, part of that film did make me laugh, actually. But TED, in regards to the videos and all the presentations, events that all happen around science and all sorts of stuff that's put out. And because TED actually put out a really interesting letter back in December. And it's kind of gone around the internet a little bit. And for those of you who don't know about what's been happening, TED have really kind of banned quite a lot of things. They started censoring stuff. This is the email now. I will, if anyone wants to find this, it's in one of their blogs, and it's called A Letter to the TEDx Community on TEDx and Bad Science. So if you put that into the search engine from blog TEDx.com, you'll find this letter, which is absolutely fascinating. It actually went out to the people, the events organisers, who organise all their, not the major TED events, but the ones that tend to go out around the country. And it's all about the fact that they feel that pseudoscience is now taking over their events. And these are the people that banned Rupert Sheldrake, who's actually a very legitimate scientist. Anyway, it says, hello TEDx community. So this is their letter out. Okay, in light of a few suspect talks that have come out of the TEDx movement, some of which we at TED have taken action to remove, some being examined now, and this recent thread on Reddit, so if you read that Reddit, it's basically, everyone having a slinging match as always, and mud going backwards and forwards. We feel it is important to reach out, because this is a real American term, isn't it? God, loads of people, I'm going to reach out to you. You know, when you do any coaching nowadays with people, particularly if they're being trained by someone in the States, they will go, I'm going to reach out to you. You know what? No, you're not. You're just going to respond to my bloody questions. Anyway, we feel it's important to reach out to all TED organisers on the topic of bad science and pseudoscience. Man, I'm loving it already. Please know this above all, it is your job before any speaker is booked to check them out and to reject bad science, pseudoscience and health hoaxes. Anyway, vetting our speakers is hard work and can lead to uncomfortable moments, I bet. But as TEDx, because you wouldn't want to admit that actually we might be right, that nutrition helps. But as TEDx organisers, your audience trust is your top priority over and above any other personal or business relationship that you may have brought this speaker to your attention. It is not your audience's job to figure out if the speaker is offering legitimate science or not. It's yours. Huh? Hey, you know what? As an audience, you're too thick to realise whether something's legitimate or not, or whether it resonates with you. No, we're going to make a decision for you. We're going to tell you what you should be thinking or saying, Ted. Because, hey, we don't want you to think for yourself. We don't want to give you choice out there. We don't want to give you options. Oh, no. We want to tell you what you should be thinking so that in this realm, and therefore, all this other stuff, hell no, we don't want you to know about that because, hey, it might not be legitimate in our eyes. Oh, no. Not at all. God, I sound even more northern than normal, didn't I? Anyway, the consequence of bad science and health hoaxes are not trivial. Oh, no. Look at the amount of people that are dying from bad science called vaccinations and surgery and proper medications that are actually given on prescription properly. And, hey, you wouldn't want to, it's not trivial at all, no. As an example, Andrew Wakefield's attempt to link autism and vaccines was exposed as a hoax last year. That's really interesting considering you know, what's happened since then, you know, but Ted have just decided to ignore what's happened since then, and actually what the judge said about one of the other researchers about, you know, him having his license removed, you know, and about what happened to those guys that did that research, because it wasn't just Andrew Wakefield that did that research, remember. But while his work was being investigated, millions of children went without vaccines, and I can only cheer about that, to be honest. And many contracted deadly illness as a result. That's just really, are they really saying that? You know, people who are putting out this information, apparently they're trying to stop people from booking people who are making, you know, claims that are unfounded, and quite frankly, that is an unfounded claim in their own letter out to their own organisers. Many contracted deadly illnesses as a result. Anyway, we take this seriously. Presenting bad science on TEDx stage is grounds for revoking your licence. You're bad. You're going to have your licence taken away from you. It's a bit like 007, isn't it? Anyway, what else is happening in the chat box? Is there anything going on out there? Let's see. Imagine food as medicine. Oh my God, I know. TED is a dogma. It is. Shirley, not Bob. Don't call Bob Shirley. How did you know, Nick? How did you know? You too. You know too much about them. I know. Anyway, the letter below has 3 sections and is designed to spark conversation, they say, focusing on 3 areas. 1, a short definition of bad science and pseudoscience. Oh yes, they're going to explain to you what that truly is. Oh my God. 2, common warning signs of bad science and health hoaxes. Above and beyond the science itself, how can you spot trouble? I'm not joking. I'm actually reading this from their own letter. This isn't me making this up. In all honesty, it'd be hard to make this letter up. 3, topics to watch out for, because in the past they have attracted bad science to TEDx events. I know, you've got these people telling people that nutrition helps. Oh my God, the pharmaceutical company will not be happy about that, let's face it. Anyway, please take the time to read this letter carefully and discuss it with your curation team. Feedback is welcome. Well, boy, did they get feedback. Anyway, 1, what is bad science and pseudoscience? There is no bright and shining light between pseudoscience and real science, and purveyors of false wisdom, snake oil, typically share their theories with as much sincerity and earnestness as legitimate researchers. Michael Gordon's recent book, The Pseudoscience Wars, is a great overview. Go out and buy it now. Needless to say, this makes it all terribly hard to detect and define. It really does. I can just imagine, Ted. I really can. It's a shame I've not got the Father Ted tune actually to play at the end for them. But here are some basic guidelines. So they even give their events people basic guidelines about marks of good science. I couldn't make this up if I tried, guys. It makes claims that can be tested and verified, which makes me wonder how on earth vaccinations have got through. Really, you know, apparently science, good science claims that can be tested and verified. What on earth is happening with things like Vioxx when it's killing people out there? Their own research showed that actually it killed people. Yet those claims could be tested and verified. I do not make this up. Vaccinations, there's no support. They cannot support most of what they put out there. Chemo's never even had a double-blind study. They say that double-blind is like the thing that actually, the gold standard of research. They haven't even done it themselves. Anyway, marks of good science. Next point. It has been published in a peer-reviewed journal, but beware. I'm not joking, but beware. There are some dodgy journals out there that seem credible, but aren't. Honestly, I couldn't make this up if I tried. I really couldn't. I know, Nick, you're absolutely right. Tested and verified. I know. If this wasn't true, I couldn't. I just. Anyway, you know what I think. It is based on theories that are discussed and argued for by many experts in the field. It is backed up by experiments that have generated enough data to convince other experts of its legitimacy. Apparently so, yeah. It's very convincing. Its proponents are secure enough to accept areas of doubt and need for further investigation. Well, that's not the pharmaceutical company, let's face it. And that's not even like biotech, you know. They're not secure enough to accept any areas of doubt and need for further investigation. You know, the only thing they want you to do is no labelling. They want you to take it, have it. You've got to have these things. It does not fly in the face of the broad existing body of scientific knowledge. Listen to that, guys. It does not fly in the face of broad existing body of knowledge, scientific knowledge. You cannot tell us any different than what our theories are saying. We will censor you if you are not part of the majority. That is what that's saying. You cannot put forward another area of thinking or for us to consider. No, you have to take on the majority of thinking. God forbid we might actually have an alternative to what actually is being proposed. Yeah, exactly, Nick. You know, accepted by experts as long as it won't undermine their work and theories. And this is what people do not mostly realise. A lot of science is based still on theory. Absolutely. It is theoretical. And yet they put it forward as fact. They don't know huge swathes. None of us knows huge swathes about our environment, how things truly work, the field, those energies. All of that is still unknown. We really do not know how our bodies truly work on the multitude of levels that they are working on. Okay. So marks of good science. The proposed speaker works for a university or has a PhD or other bona fide high-level scientific qualification. So, guys, everybody out there who feels that they understand their own body and talk from experience, well, unless you've got a PhD or a bona fide high-level scientific qualification, guess what? Your experience no longer counts. You know, you have to have gone through the university system. So you have to have gone through the agreed ways of learning and development for the majority, so that you've been trained to say the right things and you think the right way. That's actually approved as a part of a mark of good science. What you're saying out there. Do I hear Father Ted? What was that, Dougal? Right. Who else? So, Nick. So true, Debs. I have a doctor who believe theory of chemical imbalances in brain is fact, but can't be proven. Ah. What else is happening in that? Apparently you do hear Father Ted. I'm not running I never run my own shows. As you know, guys, it's me. All I do is talk for a bit, and everybody else does everything. Otherwise, I'd never get on air, if I was honest. What's JM? Oh, Johnny Meath. Okay. Hello, Johnny. How are you? Nice of you to join me. Right, anyway, marks of bad science. Here we go, guys. So, I'm just sorting my neck out, because of course I'm going to be in this category as a naturopath. Has failed to convince many mainstream scientists of its truth. Well, you know what? I propose nutrition actually helps people. I propose that botanicals actually help people. Oh my God, it's absolute heresy. You mean plants actually help people? Don't be so ridiculous. But what we might do, we might actually extract part of that plant and make it into a pharmaceutical and guess what? That'll help. That compound might help. But actually, the whole botanical, no, of course it won't help. No, don't be so stupid, for God's sake. Anyway, is not based on experiments that can be reproduced by others. Contains experimental flaws or is based on data that does not convincingly corroborate the experimenter's theoretical claims. Guess what, guys? That is the majority of our pharmaceuticals that have been passed by the FDA. Lots of them have got really skewed statistics, and the FDA are approving them left, right and centre. And they hide the data that shows that there's issues going on. What was that, Ted? Earwax, Johnny. I was talking about earwax. I cannot believe in the middle of my show you're talking about earwax. Oh my God. Apparently, Johnny and Debs need a quick fix. My ear is blocked. My side of my face is swollen. Well, who hit you? What did you say to someone to have that happen? I have no idea what's going on. Do some packing around that side of your face. And how can I answer that question on air? I have no idea what's happened to you. You could have had an allergy or all sorts of things happening. Or you could have been hit by somebody because you've been abusive. Who knows? It could be, you played the wrong music. Who knows what's happened? You probably played your iTunes or something too loud in one side of your face. Anyway, let's see what else. Boy, does she talk. Bitching. You're really, really walking a fine line there, bitching. You're meant to be in the kitchen washing up. Anyway. MMS, Johnny. Yeah, that'll sort it out if nothing else. Anyway, lie on side and put some warm oil in ear. Syringes, best way. That's from Nick. I think you need to probably pack that side of your face. Hot and cold pack it. Depends why it's happening, Johnny. Really does. You have to look at the reasoning why, and then you'll get to what's happening there. I think you've got an ear infection. I wish someone did hit me. Listen, it'll be like airplane. Everybody will be queuing up in a minute, bit by bit, Johnny, if you're not careful, saying things like that. Okay. Everyone's telling you to pour live oil on it. Anyway, maggots. What on earth are you talking about, bitching? You sure you don't mean leeches? He means leeches. Completely different ball game going on in your ears after that, I'll be honest. Anyway, the signs of bad science, never mind putting maggots in your ears and listening to people like bitching give advice. Comes from overconfident fringe experts. Man, hey, you're not part of the majority, you're a fringe, and therefore, if you're speaking a bit too loudly, you're overconfident. And that means that you might be speaking out of turn. We're not to listen to you. Shh. Be quiet. Don't want to know what you're saying at all. Apparently, as well, bad science uses oversimplified interpretations of legitimate studies and may combine with imprecise spiritual or new age vocabulary to form new, completely untested theories. What can I say? In fact, I'm just going to get a drink. Because we use oversimplified interpretations. You mean we're not making it overcomplicated so that the masses can actually understand what's going on in their own bodies, because we don't want to hold the actual wisdom of our bodies. We believe that everybody should. And it's not about saying to someone, oh, you've got this, we've got to put a label on that symptom, and therefore we can then give you this tablet. You've got no idea the correlation between the two, or what they're going to do to you, or what even that you've truly got, or why it's happening. No, we will disempower you, take away your choice. We will take responsibility away from you by giving you oversimplified interpretations. We will. We'll make everything complicated. You have no idea what's going on anymore.
I wouldn't make it a habit calling me that.
Anyway, apparently they also... Bad science speaks dismissively of mainstream science. Boo, hiss. It's almost like two sides of a football field. It really is. You shall not speak out of turn. You shall not speak in tongues about pseudoscience. No! Oh my God. Anyway, include some of the red flags listed in the 2 sections below. I couldn't make this up if I tried, guys. I really could not. I'm not even on section 2 yet. Anyway, why is Bitchin getting his coat? What on earth has happened? Gather some leaves, crush them into a bit of salty hot water. Suddenly I'm seeing why Ted actually think that we shouldn't be practicing some of these things. What on earth? By the end of today, poor Johnny, what on earth is going to happen to your head? Anyway, you try it and then hold the nose and try to make your ears pop. It starts it moving. I think you should actually just hot and cold pack it, if I'm honest, Johnny, but you need to speak to me so I can understand actually what's going on properly with your face, because it's obviously an underlying issue there of why you've got an infection. Okay, breathe deep of the steam with a towel on your head, says Tim from Tang. Boing, says Johnny Meats. But why, says Debbie, why have you responded like that? I have no idea. Anyway, Nick, has to be complicated or they wouldn't need the big paycheck for being so clever. You are so right. This is all about finances. And guess what? All this pseudoscience, as they call us, and I'm almost quite proud. I'm going to take it on. I am pseudo, and yes, I will be on the fringe, because I don't want to be part of this majority, because guess what? It just takes you down a road which means you're going to be ill for the rest of your life. You're going to be believing science that is going to make you into this person who just purchases from them in one format or another. You know, at least when you come to me, you know, my aim is to get you well through the door and out and educated, and you become empowered and take responsibility. Johnny's saying thanks for the solutions, everyone. He hasn't said that he's actually going to practice any of them, but he said thanks anyway. Now that he's covered in oil, warm hot oil, and he's breathing, steaming, and is blowing his nose whilst oil flies out of his ears at the same time. Couldn't make it up if you tried, could you really? And Laurie, as always, complete sense in the middle of this. Just roll a big smoke and forget it's there. Right. Kush, not fun going deaf. Oh dear. Yeah, I know. Anyway, number 2, red flag topics. It's already past and I've only got through one point of their letter. These are not banned topics by any means, and they put banned in quotes. But they are topics that tend to attract pseudoscientists. If your speaker proposes a topic like this, use extra scrutiny. An expanding, depressing list follows. And this is what they are listing under red flag topics. Food science, including GMO and anti-GMO foodists. Oh my God, we're speaking out about GMO and the things that is happening and the genuine science that can be reproduced, but now it's a red flag topic, because guess what? They don't want to upset the biotechs, do they? Oh no. And the fact that actually we may be speaking some sense about GMO, and we may not actually want to actually consume those foods. No, they don't want to hear the truth that actually people don't want it. We don't want GMO. She says, flinging her hair back. Okay. I did almost miss Piggy moment then. I really did. I know. Hiya! And GMOs, indeed. Right. Oh my God, I've got Kermit in the background. What's going on in the chat box now? Get them syringed every 2 years. I think I remember my whole body in oil now. Feels good. Oh my God. How does my chat box go downhill so quickly? It really does. Within a matter of minutes, it gets back into the gutter with you. It really does. What else is going on? Anyway. Bitchin' saying, nice, Johnny, nice. Oh my God, I can almost hear the music in the background. Wah, wah, wah. Okay, between the two of you. I know. You can do. It's true. You have to find some music now to play in the background. And Nick says, my doc won't syringe ears now. Says too risky. Uses small syringe, get oil. It's just mad, isn't it? You know, things that used to happen years ago as a matter of course, they're too scared to do these old-fashioned practices. What else? And Chris says he was pouring MMS into his ear. Okay. And Pat, simplicity Debs. I know. Indeed. I have nothing to say. So, what else are you saying? If you want downhill Debs, we can do a lot worse. You know what? I already know that. In fact, where is Stingray whilst we're talking about that? What has happened to the captain? He's no longer here, is he? He isn't. What on earth? Anyways, food science. This is the red flag topics. Food as medicine, especially to treat a specific condition, autism and ADHD, especially causes of and cures for autism. Oh my God, food as medicine. Who would have thought it? You know, food might actually be beneficial to you if you eat properly.
I wouldn't make it a habit calling me that.
Please don't, because actually it doesn't help you to get into our filtering system to make sure that we can give you medications for the rest of your life. Then let's carry on. Because of the sad history of hoaxes with deadly consequences in the field of autism research. Really? And you know what? Where is this deadly consequences around hoaxes? You know, for people who are putting out pseudoscience, telling us with pseudoscience, they're putting in a lot of unfounded information in here. Deadly consequences in the field of autism research. As they really look into the background of any autism related talk. If you hear anything that sounds remotely like vaccines are related to autism, there's the dog giving me a round of applause in the background. Run away! I do not joke. It actually says run away in capital letters. There's the dog leaving. She's had enough. Not enough of it all. It's all too much for me, said Frost Dog. That's it, I'm out of here. Another non-legitimate argument. We don't know what works, so we have to try everything. Pretty much all the time. This argument is designed to cause guilt in suffering parents, so they'll spend money on unproven treatments. Oh yes, we don't want you going elsewhere. We need you to come to the consumer base called vaccinations. Anyway, what else are you all talking about whilst the dog actually comes back in? Hey, let me see. Johnny, Bob, if I get some maggots, would they eat out of my wax? Oh man, I've got no idea. That's not something I think you should be doing, Johnny. And Pat says, Ray's practicing banjo. Down. Squeal! Anyway. Apparently Johnny's putting on his tights. How did that happen? How is it all happening? I'm just losing control of the chat box as always. You're all just running away with it all. I tried to talk about an important topic. There's just no point. Anyway, where are you? Laurie's saying, Johnny, they would leave the wax and eat your ear. They probably would. Johnny's saying his ear's big enough to feed a family. Cracking. Someone's at the front door. I couldn't make this up today, could I? Not only is the dog left, someone's at the front door. Is that one of you guys coming to my front door? Anyway, shall I go and open it? Yeah, whoever's here on air. That would just be so funny. Anyway, and it says more. Healing, including Reiki, energy fields, alternative health and placebos, crystals, pyramid power, free energy and perpetual motion machines, alchemy, time travel. I obviously want to get in. The neuroscience of fill in the blanks. Not saying this will all be non-legitimate and that it's a field where a lot of goofballs are right now. We're called goofballs, by the way. Yeah, you can't make this up. The fusion of science and spirituality. Be especially careful of anyone trying to prove the validity of their religious beliefs and practices by using science. We're not allowed to use their science against them. Listen to that, guys. This is what's really important. When we actually take their scientific research and show what they don't really want it to say, you know, that actually fish oils, they're doing masses of research into fish oils. We say they help on a nutritional basis. Guess what? They say, no, we're not allowed to say that. But they can say bits and pieces about fish oils until they manage to grab that compound and do what they want with it in a way that actually forces you to pay far more money for it. Oof. Look carefully at these topics. Ask to see published data and find a second source unrelated to the speaker and a recognised expert in the field. Just remember that the recognised expert in the field has now got to have a PhD through a scientific route that they approve of via the university that they approve of, who can validate the research. Someone's determined to get in. Did you hear? Yeah, I did put Zodiac Mind Warp on earlier. I did indeed. It was cool, wasn't it? Did I ever have control of the chat? Well, probably not, to be honest, let's face it. Do I ever have control of any of it? Anyway, the other things, red flag behaviour. You may not be an expert on the science or your speaker presents, yet you can easily identify and counter some common tactics that science hoaxers will use to try to get on your stage. This list is inspired by and builds off Emily Willingham's post on Forbes, 10 questions to distinguish real from fake. So there's a lovely link there, apparently, so that everyone can really distinguish the difference between fake science and real science. The thing is that mostly, people like myself are trained to use their science. We don't use anybody else's science because I can't afford to go out and do any scientific research. Only they can. Anyway. Yeah, Johnny, I know. I did buy that. I actually saw Zodiac Mind Warp. I saw them in Manchester years and years ago. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I saw them a few times. Amazing band. They were so much fun. It really was so much fun. Anyway, so the rest of their letter. Be alert if a potential speaker or the speaker's advocate on your planning team does any of the following things. Are you ready for this? You couldn't make it up if you tried. Barrages you with piles of unrelated overgeneral backup material, attempting to bury you in data they think you won't have time to read. Yes, we're not allowed to use their own data against them because, hey, they don't have time to read it. Holds a non-standard degree. What is a non-standard degree? Surely a degree from somewhere is a degree. For instance, if the physics-related speaker has a degree in engineering, not physics, if the medical researcher does not have an MD or a PhD, if the affiliated university does not have a solid reputation, this is not snobbery. Oh no, it's not. I'm obviously added that bit. Of course it's not snobbery. If a scientist truly wishes to make an advance in their chosen field, they make an effort to engage with other scholars. Dogs backwards and forwards like anything. Be alert. You're absolutely right. Do be alert. I agree. So be alert if claims to have knowledge no one else has. I couldn't make this up if you tried, could you? Yes, it absolutely fascinated me. Absolutely fascinated me. Sends information only from websites they created themselves. There is little or no comment on them in mainstream science publications or even in Wikipedia. Of course, you have to believe Wikipedia because it's completely true. There is nothing unfounded in Wikipedia at all. Provides data that takes the form of anecdotes, testimonials and or studies of only one person. Sells a product, supplement, plan or service related to their proposed talk. This is a big red flag. I'm not being funny, but lots of the people. I watch stuff on solar panels and guess what? Those guys were actually selling them. But no, that's fine. But it's not for us. Acts oddly persistent about getting on your stage. A normal person who is rejected for the TEDx stage will be sad. And will usually withdraw from you. A hoaxer, especially one who sees a financial upside to being associated with TEDx, will persist, sometimes working to influence members of your team one by one or through alternative channels. Oh, but no, you've just got to be sad. Be sad. Oh. Be sad and withdrawn. There is a river dancing dog in the background today. She has not settled. Normally she's a great tap dancing dog. The thing is, wah 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 wah. And the thing is that she's just not settled. She decided to be very ill on her bed earlier today, and my dog is very wedded to her bed. She sleeps about 21 and a half hours a day, and so, you know, to not have it is a bit disturbing for her, in all honesty. So yes, she is the river dancing dog today. So you are to be alert, says Ted, of the following things. They accuse you of endangering their freedom of speech. Hell. Shutting down a bogus speaker is in no way endangering their freedom of speech. They're still free to speak wherever they can find a platform. You are equally free not to lend them the TEDx platform. You know what? Let's speak elsewhere. Demands the TEDx present both sides of an issue when one side is not backed by science or data. This comes up around topics such as creationism, anti-vaccination and alternative health. Because, hey, they don't want you to have alternative health, which means being bloody healthy, do they? They don't want you to have a good diet with no medications. No. Acts upset or hurt that you are checking them out or doubting them. Accuses you of suppressing them because TED and TEDx is biased against them and run by rich liberals. It has one of those like smiley faces with like a wink thing going on there. You know what? I still can't get my head around the smiley faces. I really can't. Whatever that means, but apparently it's run by rich liberals. Anyway, threatens to publicly embarrass TED and TEDx for suppressing them. The exact opposite will happen, says Ted. Whilst you're not expected to become an overnight expert on all fields of science and health, here is how to start researching a topic you're not an expert in. So they even tell you how to do it. And yeah, at the top of it, they've said 10 questions to distinguish real from fake from Emily Willingham's post in Forbes, so that everyone can distinguish between fake science and real science. I thought Ted the movie was very funny as well. I particularly like the walnut bit. So those of you who know that will actually know about that, and the cyclist. Right then, start with some basic web research. So they've told you not to go onto these websites, and then basically they're telling you go on to do some basic web research, not complicated web research, because you don't want to overload you now because you're not an expert. You should be able to understand at least the big issues in every field you present on stage. Wikipedia is your first stop to gain a basic background, because hey, you know what, it's absolutely true. It's so true. I know, I love the goofball thing as well. Made me laugh. Following primary source links from Wikipedia, work out from there to university websites, science and health blogs, and databases of papers published in respected journals. Why don't you just go onto PubMed and have a look at the actual research, because lots of it is actually on there. You know, I actually work from PubMed myself, and yet apparently any science that I use is pseudo, but they will use exactly the same piece of research when it's real at that point. It's not pseudo in the slightest. Today is the rant day. Ask your local university's PR office to connect you to a professor you can speak to who has gone through the official university channels and got a PhD in the right way. Make sure, obviously that was my bit that I added. Make sure it's someone totally unconnected with the potential speaker. Another place to start is the local university library. Get yourself out and do some reading now. Go on. If you have access to that, a research librarian can help you find relevant journal articles. If you have a team member who is a journalist, ask them to fact check the speaker's work to journalistic standards. I think that's absolutely hilarious, if I'm honest. Absolutely hilarious. When you look at what the Times have just done recently to what doctors don't tell you, they took apart and used complete falsehoods through a whole article about what doctors don't tell you. We're apparently going to put into a future publication that they hadn't even read. They had never even gone to What Doctors Don't Tell You. They hadn't even talked to Limit Taggart and her team. But no, they put an article out which was absolute codswallop. Appalling journalism. Appalling. You know, Limit Taggart's taken them on via her Facebook page, and good on her. I absolutely agree what she's done, you know. But you're talking about journalistic standards. You need to go to people like What Doctors Don't Tell You. The alternative field are using far more of the science than these guys who basically are just running roughshod and putting absolute codswallop out there and thinking that people will believe it. Oh, blimey. Right, so for an example on how to check out a possible health hoax, see this great blog post examining Dr. Oz's promotion of green coffee beans for weight. Oh, and then it talks about green coffee beans, more weight loss pseudoscience and all sorts of stuff. Finally, you can always email the TED team and we can work with you on helping research the credibility of a speaker's topic before you present it at your TEDx event. As a member of the community, if you do come across a talk on the TEDx YouTube channel or at a future event that you fear is presenting bad science or pseudoscience, please let us know. Bad science talks affect the credibility of TED and TEDx. It is important we get this right. Anyway, your thoughts and suggestions are always welcome, they say. So maybe we should all write to them. How about that? I think you should all get out there and write to them about what you think about that letter, because quite frankly, I could not make it up if I tried. So the stopping talks about GMO, food being used as medicine, or even how any food can prevent ill health, or any alternative fields. I work with a lot of people with natural energy healing, energy work, that they will tell you over and over again works for them. But no, experience in this scientific world does not matter. The experience of your own body is ignored over and over again because it has to be proven in a laboratory. When you've got scientists like Pop who are effectively showing that the researcher has a complete influence on the outcome of that research. Your experience no longer matters. It has to be done in a laboratory as far as they're concerned. It has to be a science that they recognise through their own schools. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be well educated, but there are different ways of gaining education in this world. And what they're doing is preventing choice. They're censoring, and they're basically creating a platform which only has one level of information going out. You know, people who talk about GMOs now, against GMOs, are now engaged in pseudoscience. They're starting to actually not only see you as activists, but also they're starting to, what's the word? Sideline those scientists even further. Pseudoscience. Yet these people have got robust scientific research behind what they're doing. It's carried out by proper scientists. What they don't like is that there's mountains and mountains of evidence that are coming out that are showing GMOs are damaging our health. That's what they don't like, and that's what they don't want you to know about. They want to stop you from hearing about it. That's why Mercola and, like Natural Health News, Natural Health Radio, they're all getting the information out there. It's important that we have these alternative perspectives out there. Apparently those who discuss the healing potential of foods are now spreading health hoaxes. Best not let my clients realise that. Hell, they might actually get well from eating better. Do people really believe that food isn't a key component of good health? Really? Do they really believe that they can stop that message? And people's experiences, you're just going to start to ignore them and go, oh no, having junk food is far better for me. And then getting onto your medications and your GMO. Oh, that's really giving me great health, isn't it? Your own body wisdom tells you that this is so. Stop listening to these people. They eat good food themselves. That's the thing. They're well off enough to eat good food themselves, but they don't want you to. They eat organic foods. They eat completely naturally. And how is using food as being medicine a pseudoscience? If that's the case, then please can all the peer-reviewed science research that's being carried out on, like I said, fish oils, resveratrol, curcumin, your polyphenols. Oh, stop that, because Ted doesn't believe you anymore. This is a lucrative market, not only for supplement companies, but also for pharmaceutical companies who are often basing their medications on plant molecules. They spend billions each year researching the botanical resources that we have. Mind you, you're not allowed to have them because of this, which is why the Herbals Act is in place. God forbid you might actually want to use those same botanicals. Herbal medicine works, apparently only when the pharmaceutical companies have bastardised it, patented it, and probably made it useless. Go see your pseudo-scientific herbalist for the real thing. Plants, plants that are shown to have medicinal functions in the body are now pseudoscience. The earth is flat, people. This is what they're telling you. The earth is still flat in their eyes. If you're going to go to a TED Talk, you'd be better taking a bungee in case you fall off the edge of the world. If you're wondering about the power of the biotech companies, no further than this letter expressing that no one can talk on the TED stage about GMOs. They are insidious in their slow creep. They really are. They're taking over our food chain, so they have to halt freedom of speech against them. Because guess what? We don't want them. They don't even want their own people to eat them in a canteen. Their own canteen says no GMOs in the food. That's the irony of all this. Eat it yourselves if it's so great, biotech companies. We don't want it. As far as I'm concerned, I don't want it. And now Ted don't even want you to hear about the alternative viewpoint. Ted was meant to help you think outside the box, to give you a new perspective, to give food for thought, which is why I liked it so much. It allowed you to use your own intelligence to really consider what you thought fitted with how you saw the world. But dissenting views that don't fit are no longer allowed on their stage. They don't want people on their stage showing how nature provides all we need. Natural food aids health, and frankenfoods are not helpful. Apparently we are quacks and hoaxes. No, Ted, we are people who like to hear both sides of things. That's the truth, and intelligently use our minds to intelligently decide what we think is right for us. This is the thing. They are taking away that choice. It doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. It's the fact that they're taking away the choice. It's meant to be a stage where people can express, so that we, the audience, can then make a decision going forward. They're taking that away from us bit by bit. When they mention Andrew Wakefield, he never conducted any studies whatsoever that linked autism and vaccines. It just wasn't the truth. He, as many other scientists have done, showed that there is a higher incidence of gut issues in children who had autism. Go and read the information on Dr. Wakefield. Check out, the BMJ admits that fraud claim against Dr. Wakefield has no basis in fact. Go and search on that. Documents emerged proving Dr. Wakefield was innocent, with the BMJ and Brian Deere caught misrepresenting the facts. Put that into your search engine and find that. Dr. Wakefield demands retraction from BMJ after documents prove innocence from allegations of vaccine autism data fraud. Go and search on that, guys. According to Ted, there's no placebo effect, they insist, even though it has been experimentally proved to be the strongest across the board form of medicine available today. In fact, the placebo effect is so widely documented that in order to discard it, you would have to throw out all randomised, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies altogether. Ain't that the truth? I'm on a rant today, guys. So see, this is how TED destroys its own argument. It really does, and its credibility in my eyes. If the placebo effect doesn't exist, then virtually all clinical trials must be seen as being invalid. And that means TED doesn't believe in any real evidence at all. They just want you to know what they want you to know. Science isn't a static collection of knowledge. It isn't. It's a process of exploring what our reality is and exploring what is a new truth. That's what science is meant to be. They're meant to basically displace old truths. It's all theoretical. They forget this. It's not factual. It's all theoretical. That's what science is meant to do. They're meant to be looking for the new truth to support things. Anyone who believes that the science is fixed and that modern day scientists have somehow managed to find all the answers is nothing short of being an idiot, in all honesty. You know, it's meant to be all about asking the questions, about being curious in this world. That's what science is meant to do. This is what our scientific community are meant to do, not provide dogma. You know, it's become dogma. It's not become this whole curiosity and then informing us so that we can intelligently make decisions for ourselves. No, it's basically telling us this is what you've got to do because, hey, guess what? This is going to make a quick buck for us. Whew. How much time have I got? I think that's about it for today, isn't it? Anyway, let's see. The biodiversity of our nature world it's in a state of unprecedented collapse in many respects. And, this is all being done in the name of science. That's the irony about all this. You cannot believe some of the information that these guys have put out. Anyway, we shouldn't be being dictated to like this. And consider the fact that most people believe that actually we are more than our physical bodies and that there is importance behind the mind and the spirit. Lots of people are using herbals and botanicals. Lots of people know that actually food helps them. Lots of people know that actually what they think matters. Lots of people don't want GMOs and they just naturally know that we don't want it. And when we're told that we have to think in a certain way, guess what? That's dogma. That's not TED, that's dogma. Anyway, I've had a great time today. Thanks guys for joining me, and I'm off.